All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CAAB meeting on November 1st, 2023. Good to see everyone today. I'm Melanie Green, I'm the board chair, and we're going to get started. Rebecca, do you want to take over for attendance, please?
Good morning. Let's go through the people attending through the virtual option. Treasurer Alicia Topper.
Present.
David Poland.
I'm having trouble with my video. 1 second. Can you see me okay? I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Ernie Suggs. I don't believe Ernie is connected to audio, but he is in attendance. Jamie Spinelli.
Present.
Joyce Cooper. Joyce.
Present.
Now we can. Thank you. Megan Mulsoff.
Good morning.
In the room, we have Amy Rourke. Here. We have Rob Perkins.
Here.
For staff, we have Michael Torres,
Good morning, Michael Torres, Clark County Community Services.
Abby Malloy. Here. Alyssa Page,
I'm here.
Janet Snook,
Here.
Luis Nunez.
Here.
And I'm Rebecca Royce, staff to the board, and we also have our chair, Melanie Green.
Morning. All right, so hopefully everyone got a chance to look over the minutes from our September meeting. Can I entertain a motion or a conversation?
This is Alicia. I move to approve.
Perkins seconds.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we have a motion to approve the September minutes from our meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Thank you. And Rebecca, we have nominations for our CAAB executive team.
Yeah, so this is your notice that we will be looking to elect our new executive team for the 24 calendar year. Our current chair, Melanie Green, this is her first year as chair and is eligible to remain as chair. Our vice chair is Treasurer Alicia Topper, also serving her first year as vice chair, and our secretary is Rob Perkins, also in his first year as secretary. So all are eligible to continue on in the roles if they are nominated for the position. As a reminder, you can be in any one executive position for up to 3 years before needing to switch roles or switch off of the executive team. We're taking nominations anytime from now through the January meeting. If you are interested, you can let me know now. You can let me know via email after the meeting, anytime up until January, and then we'll do a last call at the January meeting before we do elections.
Great, thank you. So should we just email you any of our nominations, Rebecca?
That would be great. You can nominate yourself.
Okay.
You can nominate another board member.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. All right, next up we have Ezra Khalil from the Community Foundation of Southwest Washington, going to speak to us on Social Justice Resiliency Fund. Thank you for being here, Ezra.
Hi, Melanie. Can you all hear me? I'm having some issues. I had to call into my phone, so I'm not getting the sound from my computer.
We
Can you
can
guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much. And everybody in the room, I see there's some folks in the room as well. Great. I actually have a slide deck to share. If can I just share my screen, Rebecca?
Yes, absolutely. I'll start there.
Okay. I think I see you all still. Are you seeing, oh, sorry, I will put the, are you all seeing the screen here?
Yes.
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 Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to thank everyone for inviting me in. I'm really excited to be able to do this presentation for you. I believe I have about 20 minutes, and I will try to leave room open for questions at the end. But at any point, Rebecca or Melanie, I'll look to you all if there's questions in the room or if there's questions online. At any point, please feel free to just stop and ask questions. And then I'll try to also leave time at the end for questions. So I just wanted to start by introducing myself. I'm Esra Khalil. I'm Senior Program Officer at the Community Foundation for Southwest Washington. Hopefully most of you all know us, but to give you a little bit of an introduction to who we are, this is our recently revised mission statement, vision, and values. As Southwest Washington, I'm hearing some, as Southwest Washington's Regional Community Foundation, we are a catalytic change agent that works to weave together our community of local champions, nonprofit partners, and dedicated donors to address our community's most pressing challenges and seize greatest opportunities. The Community Foundation has about 79% of our assets under management that are guided by donor-advised funds. Approximately 10% of our assets are discretionary dollars, and those dollars make up our strategic grant-making program. Through our strategic grant program, we target the Foundation's investments towards organizations working to holistically dismantle the root causes of intergenerational poverty and reduce disparities in our region. So I'm here to talk to you about the Social Justice and Resiliency Fund. But before diving into the impact of the partnership with Clark County Community Services, I wanted to give a little bit of history on the SJR Fund and how it came to be. The SJR Fund is essentially an outcome of our lessons learned from the COVID global pandemic. In March 2020, we learned about the closures, much like everyone here in the room, that were coming across our community, and we listened to experts on the projected impacts of a global pandemic. I went back and found this. It was March 12th, 2020, that the Community Foundation began to proactively design a emergency community response fund. We did this by reaching out to our nonprofit partners and experts in the field to listen and learn about what they were experiencing and what they were seeing in the community. Foundation staff developed a real-time feedback loop with our nonprofit partners on how organizational needs alongside the community needs continue to evolve, and this information helped guide the architecture of the COVID Response Fund. We pulled together a committee that helps guide and inform the grant making. These committee members held deep knowledge and expertise in the areas of public health, housing, education, economic, and community development. The COVID Response Fund was designed to provide rapid discretionary funding to organizations working on the front lines with economically vulnerable families. So as we all know, the COVID has had a long reach. Very early on into the pandemic, data demonstrated that Black, Native, Latino communities of color were bearing the heaviest health and economic impacts during the pandemic. These disparities rested alongside historic disparities of housing instability, access to health care, fair and living wage jobs, high quality education learning environments. Pretty early on into the pandemic, excuse me, just pretty early on to the pandemic, there was a shifting focus of the philanthropic and public funds to address historic inequities by investing in, sorry, can you all still see my screen? My computer had a little bit of a shift. Can you all still see the
I can see your
the slide
screen. It
deck?
says COVID long reach.
Thank you so much for whoever provided that feedback. My screen did a little bit of a shift there. Okay, I'm just regathering my spot. So we began increasingly hearing from our nonprofit partners that the increased investments, the increased philanthropic and public investments were providing direct relief to families they were serving. However, they were working often at not our culturally specific organizations or by-for organizations, tended to be volunteer run, working on razor-thin budgets, and very little capacity support was provided alongside of the CARES Act dollars, philanthropic dollars that they were distributing. As our region began to shift, from as our region began to shift from relief to recovery, we began to recognize that our most marginal communities are often left out of larger economic gains, especially in the wake of economic crisis. Another reality was that our communities who've been historically underfunded, our culturally specific organizations and by-far organizations had been historically, their operation capacity has been historically underfunded in. Furthermore, we were hearing from our nonprofit communities that there wasn't increased investments in their capacity to address systemic inequality. One of the greatest lessons we learned was the need to support a robust and reflective ecosystem of community-based nonprofit organizations with the capacity to address both urgent and systemic barriers facing our community. The Social Justice Fund was born out of these lessons. It was built with the pillars of investing in operating support for organizations led by Black, Native, people of color, and culturally specific organizations working to reimagine the systems they were working within. Additionally, a pillar of the funding is to support capacity building for organizations to invest in mainstream or systems-based partners working to operationalize more equitable policies and practices. The oversight body for the SJR funds is our Community Grants Committee. Over the years, we have worked to ensure our Grants Committee is comprised of members with deep knowledge in our impact areas of investment who hold trusted relationships with the communities they are serving. Oh, shoot, sorry. And are reflective of the communities we're prioritizing with our strategic grant making program. We did a recent survey of our community grant committee, and I'm just going to provide some of the data we learned. 54% identify as Black or African American, 20% white, 20% immigrant and refugee. 20% have lived experience, and 20% are Native American, identify as Native American. The Community Foundation has worked to reimagine our grant-making process to be responsive to community needs, those who are working closest to disparities. We continue to iterate the grant-making process to include a community-led participatory grant-making. And we have expertise in advocacy, behavioral health, housing, mental health, working in our regional communities. So here, this brings us to the conversation with the Clark County Community Services funding. the Community Grants Committee granted out $136 to a total of 6 organizations. We were able to leverage this funding with the SJR's greater pooled funds to meet organizational requests of $280,000. Of this, approximately 50% of the organizations receiving funding were culturally specific. And how we define culturally specific are organizations that are led by the communities for which they are serving. 50% of these organizations are BIPOC-led. So 3 of the organizations were culturally specific. The other 3 were BIPOC-led. And of those that are BIPOC-led, they were also BIPOC-founded organizations serving historically under-resourced communities. 67% of these grants were critical capacity building investments, and 33% were investments in emerging organizations. I just wanted to pause here to see if anyone has any questions on either the SJR funds, the pillars, or the recent grants.
Hi.
Grants were culturally specific. Those are different organizations from the 50% that were BIPOC-led?
Yes, so sorry if that's, so 3 of the organizations were culturally specific of the 6, and then the other 3 were either they were BIPOC-led, and of those 3, the Black, Native, or individuals of color were also the founding members of the organization.
So they're all culturally specific, but you've broken out the BIPOC ones. What were the others?
Yes. So thank you for that question. All 6 are technically BIPOC-led organizations. 3 are culturally specific organizations, and so how we define that are organizations that are led by the community for which they're serving. They're predominantly serving specific cultures. One is a Chuukese led and run organization. They tend to be serving by and for the community. Of the other organizations that are BIPOC-led, they have a broader service model of creating a space centering and targeting individuals who are Black, Native, or people of color, but also having a broader service net. So one's a foster organization, one is serving individuals with developmental disability, and the other is serving those who are unhoused. Ernie, did you have a question?
Yes. Of the 3, can you name who they are? What group?
Yes. Yes. Are you talking about the 3 who are BIPOC-led?
Yes.
Yes. One is Mullen Polk Foundation, which is serving foster youth. The other is Council for the Homeless. And the final one is Ashby Family Services.
Okay, thank you.
Rob has a question also from the room.
No, I noticed David's hand up.
Oh, I apologize. Go ahead, David.
I have a few questions. One, is it a permanent fund or was it temporary during COVID? 2, how do these groups find out about this and apply? 3, are there specific things that they must be doing as a kind of service? For example, must they only serve the unhoused, or is it more broad? And then lastly, is it only to serve people that live inside the borders of Clark County, or are they able to also serve people in counties just surrounding it, or like Portland?
Thank you for those questions. There was, I believe, 4 in there, and if I miss any of them, please let me know. The first one is if it's a temporary or permanent fund. So the COVID response fund, the reason I started there was that was always designed to sunset, with the hopes even back in March of 2020 that COVID was not a permanent fixture in our world. The Social Justice and Resiliency Fund, which was born out of that, we haven't created a timeline. We haven't designated what the initiative, how long the initiative will run. Our intention and hope is that it is been seated in the Community Foundation. We are actively fundraising for it and anticipate that we will continue to actively fundraise and establish it up for a minimum of 10 years. It has been, I think one of your other questions is how do we advertise or how do we kind of promote the Social Justice and Resiliency Fund? It was designed to be a rapid community response-based fund. So we both promote it through our channels. We have 2 program officers that are deeply embedded community to share the opportunity. It's both a proactive, we have 2 types, it's a proactive and responsive grant making. And so as myself and my program officer partner, Ursula, are in community, as we learn about what the needs are, we will proactively recommend either organizations respond or apply to this. But we also have it set up where there is no deadline for applying. It's a rolling grant timeline. And we are attempting to ensure decisions are made within a few weeks of the granting request, so a rapid response. I believe your other question is if it funds in just Clark County. So we are a regional funder. We fund in Clark, Cowlitz, and Skamania counties. Our funding is restricted to Southwest Washington, so the funding is designed to support individuals living within our community and receiving services within our community. So while organizations that are perhaps headquartered outside of the region, either in Portland or Seattle, may apply for funding, programs and services have to be delivered in Southwest Washington and for residents. We have an internal mechanism, so we're a regional funder, but we do have an internal mechanism to track and restrict funding to either regional, so to Clark County specifically, or if there's grants or funding available specific to Cowlitz County, we have the internal accounting infrastructure to be able to restrict and limit funding regionally as needed. I'm sorry, was there another question embedded that I missed?
Yes, slightly. I wanted to be clear, and is there like specific like criteria that they must be doing like as a service? Like, are they only allowed to serve the unhoused or prevention from being unhoused, or for people that are in poverty, or is it more general, like what is the service they're allowed to do that qualifies?
Thank you for that. Yes, so this is, the design of this is to reduce disparities we see in the community with the overarching focus on dismantling intergenerational poverty in the community. And so organizations, we have impact areas of investments that include basic needs, educational attainment, and asset building. So organizations that are working to disrupt the cycle of intergenerational poverty and reduce the disparities are aligned. This is not necessarily designed to be programmatic investments. These investments, we have another bucket of funding at the Community Foundation through our Focus Grant program that is designed to invest in core programming. This funding is designed to invest in the capacity of the first pillars for Black, Native, or organizations run by communities of color, specifically culturally specific organizations, to invest in their capacity and infrastructure to be able to essentially disrupt the cycle of intergenerational poverty. So these are capacity building grants. And then the second pillar is for systems-based or mainstream organizations working to operationalize diversity, equity, and more equitable policies and practices. So this isn't a broad scale programmatic focus. It's more focused on organizations' capacity.
Thank you.
This is Rebecca. We are running a little bit short on time, and Ezra, I want to make sure you have a chance to go through the rest of your presentation. Any additional questions? If we don't have time at the end, then I will make sure that if I can't answer them, I will make sure I get you connected to Ezra.
Yeah, no, thank you for those great questions. I just wanted to close out by ensuring that we saw a few of the grants that were made. One of the organizations, and I can go through this pretty quickly, and I can also share the slide deck, is the Sakura 39ers, a Chickees-led organization. They were able to receive a total of $40,000, and that enabled them to hire their first paid staff employee. Another grant was made to Ashby Family Services, which supports individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. Their total grant award was $80,000. 22 came from community services dollars, and have positioned them to hire 2 FTE and open a space along Fourth Plain Boulevard. And then the final grant was a total grant award of $60,000, $30,000 coming from community services, to the Unity Center, a Black-led organization working with youth, and they were able to hire 1 full-time FTE and 2 part-time youth mentors.
So I think Rob had a question from earlier.
I didn't.
You're done. Okay, good.
I just wondered, Council for the Homeless was on that list, and I didn't quite know how they fit the criteria, and I don't see program there, so I wondered if you could talk about the intent.
Yeah, so thank you. And I can give write-ups on each of these. So the third pillar, the second and third pillar you see here for the Social Justice and Resiliency Fund are investment in organizations focused on systems change or policy and advocacy. So the funding helped support launching the Council for the Homeless's All Housing In. I believe I have to go back to their name for their recent campaign. To focus on. They brought in a speaker about 2 weeks ago, Mark Eichenbaum, I believe is his name, to kickstart a campaign around catalyzing a community response to address the housing crisis in Clark County.
Thank you.
I don't think there are any other questions from the room.
Okay, thank you. And I can share this slide deck with you, Rebecca, and answer any other questions folks might have at any time.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really interesting. And I was actually right by the Unity Center last night, and they were having a Halloween party in the parking lot, and families and kids are starting to pour in. So I was wondering what that was. So I'm excited to make that connection with your presentation today. Looks like they're doing great work. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here and joining us. We're going to move on now to our task force updates. Rebecca.
Hello. So we are moving along with the community needs assessment. We are working with Jackie St. Louis, the consultant that is working with us to incorporate an equity lens and some additional components of the community needs assessment. We have been trying to put together focus groups with people who have completed the survey of needs earlier this year to get a better understanding of what the needs are and their expertise, bring that information to the full needs assessment. We are currently scheduling meetings with those who are interested in doing that. We'll be doing a brief survey with those that were not able to attend but would like to provide feedback, and we'll be getting that information out so we can incorporate that. And then the next step will be our community forum. So where we're bringing in anybody from the community who is interested. And so we will start working on planning for those broader, bigger initiatives for the needs assessment. The full CNA has to be adopted at our May meeting. So the task force is working diligently to get all of the supplemental data that we put into the needs assessment. And so we have all of that information. We're just constantly collecting that. So that is an update for the task force.
Great, thank you. Amy, do you have any for us for the Legislative Advocacy Committee?
I have two bills that are in right now. It's too long to try to explain it, but it's HB 1343, which is a rent relief, and House Bill HB 1625, and that is rent control.
Can you tell just a little bit about what those are? I mean, just a brief overview. What does rent control mean?
The rent control, I think that it was the, let's see here, I have very good notes. One of those two was to try to have county that, or each city or county or whatever, that it do their own rent control. Like, see, I don't even know the words I'm trying to come up with for this, but that's why I said look it up. I have the internet. And then the rent relief. Is that in it?
I got it in it. You started at 1343.
1343, yes, HB 1343.
Reads, providing local governments with options to grant rent relief, preserve affordable housing in their communities. There's
And it's long.
And what about 1625?
1625.
Okay, so 1343 allows the city or county to establish an affordable housing incentive program to provide property tax exemptions to apartment complexes, multifamily properties, to make the units affordable to very low income residents. The other number was 1645?
1625.
1625 reads, just pulling up the bill's summary. Does not have bill summary.
No, if you go to the original, like.
Enabling local governments to plan and adopt programs to stabilize and control rents.
Those are the two big ones that Washington Housing Alliance is working on too.
Thanks.
Are they likely to merge at some point? They seem to overlap.
Yeah, they, no. They weren't merging, two different ones, but.
Yeah.
Well, the 1625 looks like a repeal of two sections of Washington law.
The Washington Constitution does not allow rent control, and that might be what that bill is working towards, is repealing that requirement so that there can be more local control over rent controls.
Yeah, we're in last year, I think, but they.
Well, so far, it's very short bill.
Right, the other one's super long.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we anticipate hearing more at the January meeting.
Absolutely, and, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great, Rebecca, back to you for a couple updates.
Yeah, actually, I am going to turn this next topic over to Abby Malloy. She's been the one actually working on this for the Refugee Stabilization Grant application.
Hey everyone, I'm Abby. I'm a program coordinator with Clark County Community Services. So we received notification from Washington State Department of Commerce back in September of a request for application with the intent of deploying funds to counties to support and stabilize newly arriving refugees, specifically intended for those arriving from the 2021 Afghanistan conflict and the 2022 Ukraine-Russia conflict, but the funds are flexible and available to any individuals who are defined as refugees. We submitted an application on October 6th, and our application was designed to be a sole source with Lutheran Community Services Northwest, which is the designated refugee resettlement agency in Clark County. So basically, if we were awarded the funds, we would subgrant entirely with Lutheran Community Services Northwest, who would use those funds in their existing programs to supplement the services that they're already providing, since they're already integrated into the community. And we should be hearing back any day now. Their estimated date that they were going to announce grantees was yesterday, October 31st. So hopefully we'll hear back this week. Any questions?
Sounds good.
How large are the grants? How large was the request?
The request was close to $1 million. They have 4.3 million per year to award for the entire state, and applications were limited to 2 million. So we submitted one around $1 million
Per year.
per year. Yeah,
Per
exactly.
year?
Yes.
So, and the fund itself, how big is that? Is that a documented thing, do you know, or?
The fund, they said was 4.3 million per year.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is David. My question is, so if they got the grant that went to the Lutheran Services Northwest to, and it's like a one-time chunk, I guess they get, is this so that they hire more people so they can serve more people because they're expecting more people to come in that are seeking asylum or refugees or immigrating, or how exactly is the money to be spent?
That's a great question. Thank you, David. The intent of these funds is flexible funding, and it sounds like there is a lot of flexibility with how the funding can be spent. It says assistance can include, but it's not limited to, paying for rent and housing needs, transportation, healthcare, food, employment barrier removal, clothing, and other essential needs, items, or services that the applicant deems necessary. So it sounds like the funding would go directly to the refugees to support their essential needs.
Thank you so much. I appreciate explaining that.
Part of the reason for the funds is designated to go to counties that have received a higher proportion of refugees into the community. So if you look at the data from DSHS, which is where the refugee resettlement funding comes from, Clark County is the #1 county receiving refugees per capita, and number 3 in the state for total number of refugees that come into our community. And that's one of the designations for the funding or requirements, is that we have to be a county that has a higher level of resettlements in our area. The funds are definitely meant to be flexible and to fill gaps where the other funding is not either available or is just not enough funding to cover all of the needs that are available. For example, rent assistance is all other resources are supposed to be exhausted before you can kick in these funds. So it's just kind of fill in those gaps, and the grant will be for 2 years. When our request was 1 million per year, and will hopefully be allotted the full amount.
Thank you for clarifying that, Rebecca.
3, I thought you said 3rd in the state.
So we're #1 per capita. So if you take the total number of people and how many refugees are we settling, Clark County is #1. And then if you took like at just how many people, it's #3.
Yeah.
King County and
King and Snohomish, yes.
are the first two for if you're only looking at pure numbers. And Lutheran Community Services has been doing this work for a really long time. And the grant application actually recommended that we work with our local resettlement agency if we have one in our community, which is why we want to work directly with Lutheran Community Services. Essentially, this will be pass-through dollars. They're going to come through us and straight to Lutheran Community Services so they can continue the work that they're doing.
Good work, but I really am surprised at #1 per capita, because we get very little publicity, let's say.
We're recognized as for PDX area, we're not really.
Well,
Legislators watch now for recognizes.
I'm glad we don't publicize it, or people might start screaming.
Any other questions about the refugee stabilization grant? We will keep the board posted and when we hear about funding. Melanie, do you mind if I go on to the next topic?
Yeah, no, please go ahead. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we wanted to give the board an update about some staffing changes. We've been having a lot of staffing changes over the last couple of years. We've been adding and moving staff around. So this isn't kind of new information for you, but this last component is one of the program coordinators that is in the CHAD unit, so Community Action Housing and Development, which is Michael is our manager. Emily Langston, who oversees the affordable housing program in our unit, has left the county to go on to a planning position with the city of Gresham. She actually has her degree is in planning, and so she's going back to the work that she was originally training for. And so that left an opening in our unit, and Michael has asked that I take over the affordable housing role, and so step into Emily's position, which means I will be leaving my role with Community Action, and I will no longer be staffed to the Community Action Advisory Board. I think most of you have only known me as your board person, so this will be a kind of a big change. But I did want to let you guys know that that transition is happening. When Abby was hired as a project position to help with our COVID positions, I've been mentoring her, and she's been helping me take a load off of the work that I've been doing for a while now. And the position is open. Actually, it just closed on Friday. So we are hiring for the position. Abby did apply along with a couple of other people that we will be interviewing next week to make a final decision. And then we will let the board know when that staffing change has officially happened and who will be stepping into my role as staff to the advisory board. Please know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to still be here doing the work, so you can still reach out to me. My email will still be the same. My phone number is the same. And I'll make sure to get you connected with our new staff person. Michael will still be here to support the person in that role. And in the meantime, Abby is going to kind of take on a little bit more. She's been doing more work with the community needs assessment until we really fill that position. And then we can transition it to the new person that's hired for the role.
So Abby will be serving kind of an interim role?
Correct.
Could you spell your name?
Spell it?
Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Abby Malloy, Abby, and my last name is Molloy. And Rebecca can send out my contact information if you want me to reach me.
Rebecca, how many years have you so far been serving with the CAAB as of today?
It's roughly 10 years. I've been with the county in the department for 15 years. Come next month, will be 15 years with the county. And then I believe it's been about 10 years with the advisory board and my role in community action.
Well, you will be missed.
I also supported the board as the office assistant beforehand too. So in a lesser role that I did. So for 15 years, I've been working with the full board.
I don't know that we'll have an opportunity to publicly thank you, but thank you on behalf of the board. I've been here. Seems like a long time. You've always been the rock behind the group, so thank you.
I appreciate that.
All you do.
And I will still be here, and I will support our new person, whoever takes that role, and Michael will be here also to support the person. So hopefully it'll be a smooth transition for you guys, but I know you've come to see my face, and so that will not be happening as often.
So what was the name you're going to community?
So we nickname our unit the Community Action Housing and Development Team, or CHAD. We also joke that we are CHAD-tastic. So that's just what all of the programs that fall under Michael as a program manager. So it includes quite a few different areas of funding.
Well, thank you for your leadership and your guidance and your knowledge that you've given and shared with all of us over the years. We'll miss working with you, and I think we should call ourselves CAAB-tastic. If you're CHAD-tastic, I think that gives us the right to be CAAB-tastic.
Support.
I'm seeing some head palms. Well, thank you, Rebecca. We'll miss working with you, but wish you the best in your new role. All right, and back to you for the Clark College Financial Wellness Program update.
Yes, so this is kind of two parts of your agenda today. We have been notified by Clark College with their financial wellness program that they are reorganizing the work that they do around their financial wellness programs, and have let us know that they will be terminating their contract this year. They estimate to be done around January timeframe. It's not a firm time as they're transitioning staff and things like that. So the contract will be ending. As you know, the request for application, we typically do a 2-year contract followed by a 1-year contract that then is leading into the next request for application process. They have let us know that they estimate that they will return about $30,000 for the second year of their contract, and then obviously won't get a third year of their funding. We wanted to let the board know not only is that happening, that is going to happen shortly, but we wanted to inform the board of the funding that we have available and where we are planning to use that. It also triggered me to remember that the board was looking for more of a more solid understanding of what we do when we have funding that is unused. So I'm going to transition to that. So for these funds, very specifically, as we've talked about in previous meetings, we are experiencing shortfalls in our House bill dollars and our community, consolidated housing grant, CHG dollars. Those are the funds that are allocated to the counties and to the state, then to the county through document recording fees. There's been a significant shortfall there. We actually have 2 community action programs that receive a split between our community action funds or community service block grant dollars and our House bill dollars. Those are 211 Info and Clark County Volunteer Lawyers Program. So we are going to use those funds to fill in and make sure that those programs do not experience any shortfalls because of the House bill dollars that are not going to be available in their contracts to fill that gap in that funding. Then we haven't been able to sit down and really do the budget yet. We're still working through and trying to fill all of the gaps that we know are coming for the House bill dollars. So we don't have exact numbers yet. Any remaining dollars that we have, we've also been experiencing some shortfalls in the CNA process. We have put in a lot more staff time than we have ever in the past to do this extra work to really make sure that we are hearing the voices of people who are low income, and it is taking additional staff time and a lot of extra translation services and interpretation services. So the funds will be used not only to fill those gaps there in the contracts, which is our first priority to get those dollars out into the community, but also to help with any shortfalls that we experience just because of the extra work we're trying to do with the community needs assessment process. Any funds after that will be put into the next request for application process, which we will be starting next year. So that way they get back out into the community. So the next few slides are just going to be a better understanding of what we do. This has been our practice. So this is just kind of putting it more in writing for you guys, what the practice is for when we receive extra funding, when a contract doesn't spend out, or those types of things. So we first wanted to talk about when new funding is coming in. Those are funding that's never been received before. We've been seeing a lot of that over the last few years. It's typically not that common that we receive funding that we've never had before, but it has been happening lately. So our first goal, we always have to review the regulations around the funds and what the requirements are there, and then go based on that requirement. But our goal is to add those new funding into the next regular RFA process that is overseen by the CAAB if we can. Lately, it's been very quick turnarounds. For example, the refugee stabilization grants, we had, I believe, 3 weeks from the time we were notified of the funding to actually submit an application for that. Then our second goal is, if we need to, is we'll do a complete, separate RFA process if we can. And you've seen that a couple of times over the last year with the Eviction Prevention Rent Assistance Program and then the Emergency Housing Fund. So we have had 2 separate processes because we received additional funds. And so we put a small committee together to be able to move those funds forward. So that is what our goals are whenever we see new funding. We really do want it to go through the CAAB as much as we possibly can. Sometimes with the refugee stabilization grant, it is just impossible. So we do that as much as we can. Yes, Bridget.
So the funding that you're reallocating from Clark County, Clark College, is being spread over 2 or 3 places, and I'm not arguing with that decision, but CAAB was the one who originally approved or set priorities on the allocation. Should it not come before CAAB for a vote?
So the priorities are determined by the community needs assessment. And so all of these programs where the funding is going still follow the priorities of the community needs assessment and applications that were approved or sole sourced through that RFA process. So there's no new programs or there isn't any outside of that. It's staying within what the RFA process does. And just making sure that those programs don't experience any shortfalls. So when we have ongoing funding, that's defined as funding that's been previously received by Clark County. So our community our community services block grant, consolidated homeless grant, all of those that we just normally get. They usually have regular planning and procurement requirements that we go through. We include those in the regular RFA process conducted every 3 years. If there's additional funds that we receive through existing grant agreements with Commerce, we have a priority of how we do that. So this lays that out. So our first priority is to allocate those funds as identified in the grant agreement into existing programs identified in the most recent RFA. So that's kind of where this was happening. We use those funds for activities required to provide the previously approved programs in the community. So this would be things like reporting requirements, staffing, planning, and other administrative requirements. That's kind of where the help going into the community needs assessment process is going to be. And then if there's significant level of additional funding, we want to do a separate RFA process and have that be part, the CAAB, if not the full CAAB, a subcommittee of the CAAB. Be part of that and then do new application and the full procurement process for those. And then the final area that we wanted to address that gets asked is the reallocation of funds. So these are defined as funds that are recaptured. So this is really where the Clark College ones are coming, right? They've been allocated out. We're now recapturing them. And so our priorities are, again, we want to fill any shortfalls for administrative or programmatic requirements. We want to fill any shortfalls in other previously approved existing contracts. So if an agency indicates that the program that they're providing costs have gone up and it's costing more than they anticipated, this is really common, especially with rent assistance programs where all of a sudden market landlords are increasing rents $100 to $300 per month. Then they had originally said they were going to serve 20 households. Now they can't because of the increases in the rents. And then they can reach out to us. And if we have reallocated funds, our goal is to get them back out into the community as quickly as we possibly can. A lot of the reallocation of funds is very small amounts. And agency didn't underspend $10,000, things like that, that wouldn't warrant putting together a full procurement process. It would cost us way more than that to even put that process together before we could get it out to the community. And then the third priority is to add those funds to the next RFA process to get them back out into the community. And so we will increase the amount of money available in that request for application.
Going back to the Community Foundation's presentation, that funding from the community originally was an allocation which did not come through the CAAB board. On the other hand, where we've got pieces of money, like you say, $10,000 will make a huge difference to somebody like Unity Center, whatever that was. So are we adding to the Community Foundation Fund, or is that funding coming to an end? Or do we have a process where they're getting a certain amount every year and should extra money when we have it maybe go into that fund? Or
so the original funding that we received that we ended up sole sourcing to the Community Foundation is from what's called a proviso budget through the state. So they allocated outside of their, or through their budgeting process, legislative budgeting process, an amount of funds that went specifically to, and had very specific, it had to go to community action agencies, and it has to be used for BIPOC and equity work. It's flexible within that, but it really is focused on who the recipient of those funds are. And so that was a one-time funding, but we were able to provide additional funds. We worked with our intellectual and developmental disabilities group and our behavioral health group, and they added in additional funds also. So it wasn't just the community service block grant proviso funds that went into that, which is why you saw like talk about serving those specific types of entities. So the state, we just got our new grant agreement. The state did do an additional allocation. It will be a 2-year allocation, but it is a significantly less amount of funds. We are getting $30,000 per year. And so we are going to contract ready and in the process to put those funds back into the Community Foundations program because it meets that requirement. So they will, if we get additional funds, we will put them for the proviso funds. We will put it into that so that they can do the good work of really increasing the capacity of these small organizations.
Is there any way reallocation of funds could also have a provision that it could go to that fund?
It's possible. The recommendation would be that they actually come in through the RFA process so that they're in a more formal position where we could give them other funds outside of the proviso, but it's not, it's no, we could, yes. Their community action funds are flexible enough, but remember that the community service block grant funds, every dollar there has to be designated through our needs assessment. That's prioritized for that. So it's very possible that that's something to do. But we do know that we want the proviso funds because that meets that very specific requirement.
Yeah, I just saw those odd amounts.
Right.
Yeah, Rebecca, can I jump in for just a moment? And I think that's a really interesting idea, Bridget. You know, the priorities for any reallocation of funds are kind of like as in the slide in front. You know, we want to fill shortfalls, you know, whether they're administrative programmatic, or we want to fill in shortfalls in previously CAAB approved programs that were selected, you know, competitively via RFA. And, you know, then, you know, other shortfalls, we want to add them to the next RFA process, right? You know, whatever it may be. Now, that works, like if the CAAB were like, well, we want to, instead of adding it to the next RFA process, have a source of funding to repopulate funds to the community foundations, social justice resiliency fund. We'd have to be careful. You know, I think it's possible. We would have to be careful of what funds were reallocated, because that might work with CSBG reallocations. It wouldn't necessarily work with House Bill or CHG or some other types of fund reallocations that have a designated use and a designated target population. One of the things that we really, one of the advantages of what the Community Foundation is doing is that it's much more broad in terms of what the organizations applying for the funds, how they're going to use them, how, you know, what their need is, and also the amount of funding that they can apply for is much less than contracts that we are limited to managing. Like, there's no way that community services could enter in a direct contract that's like $10,000 or $5,000. We don't have the staffing capacity for that, and it just broadens what organizations can receive those funds by going through the Community Foundation. But we would have to be very careful about what funds go to that fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the reason why I suggested it in a way, because Community Foundation is building capacity in small culturally specific organizations that the county, and I've argued for years, but the county can't do because of the minimum contract requirements that you have. So it would be a way to do what I've always thought would be great, which is to sort of support small emerging nonprofits for whom $10,000 is a lot of money, you know? So good to keep it in mind. I don't know if it'll work, but I like the idea.
Amy, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, is 2-in-1 is one of the ones that they planned on.
Yeah, so they have House bill dollars, which we know there's a shortfall in the House bill dollars, so that's.
Has anybody ever tried to use 2-in-1? I'm just wondering. Aren't they statewide though?
So 2-in-1 actually is out of Oregon. They cover Oregon and Southwest Washington. We fund just the work that they do here in Clark County.
Has anybody ever tried to use it?
Yes, and all of our agencies, and we do a checkup with our agencies to see how their use has been.
I'm just, yeah, I mean, I've seen it on neighborhood too. I'm all like, had success with that. I'm all King County, if you use their zip code to do, but.
Are you doing, maybe we could talk afterwards, because we're always looking for that feedback to give 2-in-1 on things that are working and things that aren't working on their system. Thank you. Any other questions?
I just wanted to add that at where I work, we carry the 211 card here so that everyone that comes in here can pick up as a resource. Just come to the Recovery Resource Center for your 211 card.
Right, and just so you guys know, it's required out of all of our contracts that they have their 2-in-1 posters posted and resources available to anyone that comes into their services. Anyways, we'll move on to the next topic. Thank you.
Right, and I have to apologize, I have to jump off in just a few minutes, so I'll turn it back over to you, but we have Jamie and Sam from the City of Vancouver giving us an Affordable Housing Fund update.
Hi, this is Sam. I guess I'll start. Not a lot of updates on the Affordable Housing Fund. We'll be reopening applications in January for housing production. We'll have $10 million available the next 10 years. That's not just for housing production. It includes rental assistance and some homelessness funding. So the big update for today is we are on the same schedule as the county on our CDBG and home application cycle. So we had mandatory pre-applications that were due last night, and we received 46 pre-applications requesting $9 million. We have about $2 million available that we're planning to award. So not everybody that submits a pre-application will submit a full application, but that just gives a bit of a perspective on the demand for services. Not that I need to tell this board that, but one other thing that I wanted to brag about a little bit on our team is that we had 12 new agencies that applied this year that have never applied for this funding before. So I think that's awesome. We've been trying to do more outreach and establish more partnerships. So unfortunately, that also increases the competitiveness of this funding, but we're looking for the best programs that to serve our community. So our scoring committee will look at all the applications in February or March, and then they'll have some tough decisions to make. And that's my update.
This is Jamie Spinelli, the homeless response manager for the city. And I think the only updates I have, which I've touched upon previously, but I think we have some more solid dates, is that the Safe State community for downtown Site 3 should be opening November 20th or 21st. I think we're going to do a community open house prior to opening. So you can look for invitations to that on the city's social media as well as website. And then it looks like Site 4, which is closest to Kagan's Bowl up at 46th and Main, should be opening around December 18th or 19th, I believe. I think that might be all of my updates.
Thank you. We will move into our finance reports. And I believe Alyssa is here, and she can go over the reports for us.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, it's Alyssa Page, and I work in the finance unit at Department of Community Services. And I'm going to do a quick overview. It's a massive report. If you have any questions, and we have time, we can do those today. But of course, you can always follow up with an email to me, Abby, and/or Rebecca, and we can answer any specific or non-specific questions you might have. So the first report we have is our annual expense report, and this runs from July of 22 through June of 23. It's broken out by two different funding sources. So we say regular, which are non-COVID funds, and then later on in the report, we'll kind of scroll down quickly and show you where the COVID funds start. But it has, for example, on the left, the community action programs. It lists the contract names, the annual report period, and then in the green, it breaks out all the different funding sources. So you'll see House Bill 2060, 2163, and 1359. Those are our local document recording fees that we keep here. And then the CHG, CHF, HEN, hotel leasing, rapid rehousing, those are all grant funds that come in. You'll see the contract amount over in the blue, the total spent, balance, and percent spent. And then Rebecca, if you can just scroll down, I know we're on kind of a time restraint. Once you get through all of our regular funds, it then goes into our COVID funded programs. And we separated those out because those kind of run on a different spending cycle and have different start and end dates. So once you get to the COVID funded programs, it's still set up the same way as the regular funds, where you see the program, the contract period, the funding source, which the majority are COVID funds. There are a few other funds on there that are locally funded that we added to help cover administrative or program costs that they had. The contract amount, the total spent in this fiscal year, and then the total contract spent and the balance remaining. Are there any questions about the expense report, how it's laid out, or? Rebecca, if you're talking, you're on mute.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yay.
I have a question. This is Ernie. Can you get it any smaller?
Yeah, I mean, we need to add like 10 more rows on there and make it even smaller. I think a version was emailed out, so you can make it bigger if you want to. There's a printed version. I suggest you use the biggest paper that you have if you're going to do the printing.
Yeah, for those in the room, they have it on 11 by 17, which is the biggest paper that we have, and it's still small. We recognize a lot of information that we try to put together in as much of an understanding way as possible. But yes, we do recognize that it is quite intense.
So question around Council of the Homeless Community Planning.
Is that with the regular funds?
Homeless Crisis Response System?
Yes.
Top one.
57%.
Yeah, they're just at 57%. I wondered if they got alternate funding for some of that.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah, they got alternate funding, but that also includes funding for the Homeless Action Plan, which was on pause for quite a while. And so they're starting to get back into planning for that. So we had designated extra funds for that work. Of course, they didn't do that work for a while because of the pause, and then they'll be going back into it.
And so the end of their contract is not.
We will roll over funds where we can we will make sure that they are funded for the Homeless Action Plan work. So yeah, but that's why it looks like they're underfunded or underspent this time. There's a couple of them or a few, and in another year or two, we will go back to where everything just fits on a nice fiscal year. There's not all these COVID funds that are supplementing programs, and we'll see where people, 99% of the programs are spent out 100% at the end of the fiscal year. And so we are seeing that most of the programs are now getting there. A lot of the COVID funds are ending or have ended. And so over the next year or so, you'll see where it'll kind of go back to where a more typical reporting period looks like. And there'll be those, periodic ones that are underspent, but most of the time they're spent out.
And those supplements will be gone.
And we won't have those funds, yes, so
They have till July to do that, right?
the next fiscal year, so it just started the fiscal year is July 1st for 2023 through June 30, 2024 is our next fiscal year. You'll see the 6-month report at our May meeting.
And we do prioritize spending out the grant funds first because those are use or lose. And then our local document recording fees, we can carry over into the following fiscal year and spend. So I can say for my grant funds, 95% of our funds given to us by Commerce were spent out. And then it would be the local document recording fees that we use to carry over, which is a good thing at this point if they weren't 100% spent out, because document recording fee collections are extremely low in comparison to previous years.
That's where our shortfalls are coming. So we've made a commitment for 3 years of funding through those requests for application. And now we're trying to make that commitment.
For year 3, yeah.
Yeah, projected low collections over the last year.
So the RFP we just reviewed, or some of us reviewed, were additional dollars to make up, to maintain services that are already.
The emergency housing fund, not yet. That will be on the next one because they're not.
They didn't start in this fiscal year. They started July after this report was published.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you will see those in the 6-month.
You'll see those, yep, next year.
And it wasn't based on shortfalls within this July to June period. It was based on projected shortfalls for this year.
Both. We had to submit a report to the state about our commitments to the contracts, our sunsetting grant funds that were ending, how much we would need projected to continue the programs through fiscal year 24. And we came up with a shortfall. It was around $7 million that we would need to continue all of our contracts at 100%. And the state gave us around, what was it, 5.4 million in emergency housing funds. So there is still a shortfall for covering the contracts that we're figuring out.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's the revenue report. And we separated out the local document recording fees. We collect those a year in advance before putting them in contracts. So we list 2 years, fiscal year 21, which we spend in fiscal year 22, then fiscal year 22, we spend in fiscal year 23. If all of the funds are not spent, those funds do carry over into the next fiscal year. And then we have a column for any grant revenue. So that would be funds coming from the state, or it could be federal or state funds that we get. And just to kind of give you a for example of our shortfalls, if you're looking at our local document recording fees, which are 2060, 2163, and 1359, we collected about 5.4 million in document recording fees. Now on your 6-month report for what we've collected for this fiscal year, it's about 2.8 million. So we're about 50% less than what we collected the previous year to date. And 100% of our funds are committed in contracts. We do prioritize spending our grant funds first, since those are use or lose, and we can carry over any unspent House bill revenue. Are there any questions about the revenue report?
I have a question on the report. This is Ernie. Is there some sort of magical total we can come up with on that report?
Any sort of magical what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Total for the grant revenue at the bottom. What is our total?
We have some charts here that well, I'm not sure if we do have a revenue chart that should be coming up, but do you want to jump to that, Rebecca, or?
I was just curious if that could be.
Yeah. So here's the total for the revenue funds, sources, local, state, and federal.
Okay.
And this is for all our regular funds and our COVID.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have some charts and graphs broken out. And is this the first one? Oh, that's the revenue. Yeah, we'll go back to the first one. Thank you, Rebecca. So here's funding expended by fund source. So you'll see that the COVID funds, CSBG, CV, TRAP, TERA, ERAP, spending for the fiscal year.
The ones in orange are COVID, except for I do notice there's an error that the ERAP should be in.
Yeah, and the dates updated, so that should be June 22 to, July 22 to June 23, updated there.
Dated, I apologize. And then the regular funds are.
Regular funds in blue, yes. And funding by service type. So you see the programs over and the percent of spending. And the rent assistance was the most, 52%.
Rent assistance, so we had all the ERAP and those funds, and then shelter is the 21%.
And here's, again, this is funding by service type, and it breaks out the regular funds, which are the lighter green color, and then the COVID funds, which are the dark green color.
So rent assistance is primarily.
Correct.
Well,
and the majority of our COVID funds were rent specific that we had to use the funds on. So if we get funds from the state or the feds, they're specifically written to what we can use the funds to spend them on.
there's a real cliff coming.
It already has come. This is just the report. This is the chart that we already were looking at, just breaking it out by funding source. And then this is just looking at it in a different way where the over the last, since we received COVID funds. So remember, this is not a fiscal year. Community action and homeless crisis response system are a fiscal year, but the COVID funds are since inception of COVID related dollars. And so you can see we've received nearly $100 million in COVID related dollars over the last 3 years.
We should have built 30 high-rise office buildings.
Unfortunately, 80 million of that was prevention rent, not unfortunately, and no, I mean unfortunately, but it was designated to rent assistance, and not be able to use for, construction or things.
I'm just thinking,
but
have longer term.
Right.
To have that much, is that 5 elementary schools of square footage and residential stuff is cheaper to build? That would have been nice in addition to the rent assistance.
Yes, Amy.
So I'm sorry for going back, but that revenue report here, where it says the document reporting fee for the sale, refinancing of houses, it's obviously went down a lot on all 3 of those.
That's where the house.
Does that mean that people aren't selling or they're, of course they're doing their stuff, but does that mean that there's a decrease in all that?
Correct. So the document reporting fees, there's actually quite a few documents that fall in that we receive this fee through, but the most common is when you purchase or refinance a house. And with the increase in interest rates, the number of houses that are selling or being refinanced has significantly dropped.
But people are still getting married. Well,
the marriage, yes, we do still get that on a fairly even keel. The last component of your finance report is that we are required to make sure that you all know that the county submitted their annual audit for the year. It was submitted on September 21st of 2023 for the calendar year. Also, Clark County's fiscal year, which is January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. There is one finding in the full audit for the entire county, and it was actually out of the auditor's office. They had some capacity issues and they weren't accurately reporting some financial capital contributions. Has nothing to do with the department, nothing to do with our Community Action Advisory Board, any of our funding that we have over here. But I am obligated to tell you that there is a finding, and so that you are aware of it. If you would like to dig more into it, it's really captivating, 100 and something pages of numbers. You can go to the State Auditor's Office website, do a portal search for Clark County, and all of those audits will come So we'll move into our last couple of agenda items. One, we would like to open it up to open forum. If there's any visitors to the board that would like to state anything for the record, the floor is open.
Hey, Rebecca, right before we do this, can I say something very quick about the audit?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the annual audit from the state auditor's office, but I just want to make sure that CAAB understands that they did look at our programs and our funding sources. There were 7 different programs and funding sources in community services that were audited by the SAO, and there were no findings on any of those. It was clean. So that's a lot of it is a credit to our finance staff, Alyssa, Ryan Treglown, and on the program side, Rebecca had a big role in making sure that the SAO received all the information that they needed and that the program had been running properly and tracked ahead of time. That's all.
Thank you, Michael. So we'll open up to open forum for any visitors to the board. Do we have? Not hearing any, we'll move on to other business. Bridget, do you have a question?
Do we have applications in for additional board members?
That is the next topic on our agenda. It's not in your agenda. I did add this when I was creating the PowerPoint yesterday because I do recognize that I didn't have it on there. We had a very tight agenda and I did speak quickly. So I'm happy to stay after and answer questions. So we do have applications for the positions. We have 6 openings on the board. We received applications for District 2, and District 3 elected officials and our District 1 low-income representative positions. Those applications have been sent to the review committee and they are reviewing that, providing feedback.
By Friday.
Amy, yes, I've heard back from David and I'm waiting back to hear from Melanie and Amy on their recommendations on how to move forward with those positions. We had 3 positions that we did not receive any applications for. That would be the low income district 5, low income district 3, and one other one. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. But we will be re-advertising for those positions. There's open positions. So we will re-advertise for those. I'm waiting to hear back from the subcommittee on how they want to proceed with the other ones before I do that reopening. I also wanted to let you guys know that it is unlikely that we will have all of the positions filled, even with the ones that they submitted their applications by our January meeting, because the county council has canceled most of their December meetings, which is when we would do the consent for the approval of those board members to have them in place for the January meeting. So just as an FYI, we might do a little change to how things go, but we're hoping to get at least most of those filled. If I can get those on the consent agenda as soon as possible. And then we'll do the re-advertising for those other positions that have not been filled so we can work on getting those taken care of.
So for the positions that you have applicants, is there competition? Is there a lot of applicants for each of the positions or?
So we actually have 4 applications for the low income District 1 position. So right now the subcommittee is picking their top 3 candidates to invite to do interviews for them. So we'll be getting that. So that one will take a little bit longer because there'll be some scheduling of interviews and things like that. And then I'm just waiting to hear back on their recommendations for the other 2 positions.
Rebecca, I had a question about that. This is Jamie.
Yes.
If someone got into the board in a specific district and then during their tenure here moved out of the district, would they still be able to maintain in that space?
They would then have to move into an open position in the other district where they are then residing.
Okay. I was just asking because I remember I just thought District 3 is the same district that the Outpost is in, Safe State Community. And these are the kinds of things that, we're trying to encourage folks who are living in those spaces to be part of. But then, eventually they move into housing and it may not be in that district. Okay.
Actually, so Amy is very familiar with this. She was previously resided in Washougal, which at that time was District 4. And then something. And then now she moved into more of the Vancouver core, which is now she's in. But we just happened to have an opening. So it really needed a way to transition for her. Doesn't usually work out that smoothly, but we do try to do the best that we can for those positions.
They wouldn't carry out their term, or at least the end of the, till somebody else was.
Correct. It's where you're residing at the time.
So it would terminate as soon as you move?
I do also want to let you know that Lance Carter, who is one of the positions that was up for reappointment, has declined to reapply. And so he's going to move on and do other things with his time that he has, the opportunities he has available to him, and which is one of those positions that is open and we did not receive any applications for at this time. So.
David's hand is up.
Yes, David.
I had a question from somebody I had mentioned this to. I said that after the committee had decided what they wanted to do, that you decide if we were going to accept more, and then you give me more information to share. But they wanted to know, is there an age limit? Like, can youth serve? Because there are some youth people that I talked to that were high school aged, who are into prevention measures, and some who maybe have family members or themselves who have been homeless or who live in poverty, some of which are diverse people. And they want to know, well, are we not allowed to sit on the committee because we're not 18 yet?
I don't believe there's an age requirement, so I don't know, there should be a reason that they can't be on the board because of age. If they're filling a low income rep position, they will need to meet the requirements of being nominated to the board, which might be a little bit harder for them to do, but we can all work with them, and we'll try to find a way of doing that. So, but I don't believe that age would be a requirement for the board. David, there is.
Give me whatever information you have when you're ready, and I'll just share it with people.
We always share it with the board, and we always want the board to send that information out. Amy, you want to?
Well, I was gonna say, I'll connect with you, David, afterwards. I got some resources for you.
Fantastic. So Amy will get you some resources for you. We are almost out of time, and I just wanted to give you a brief update on your next meeting is our January meeting. It's usually our full day. When we used to do it all in person, now it's 2 half days. So we will do our board business on our normal meeting time, which is January 3rd, 2024, starting at 9. This will be a longer meeting, so we'll go until noon to do the board business side of the meeting. And then we are working together, Abby and I are working to bring in a training for the second portion of the day. We are working with them to see what their availability is, and when we get a few dates and times, then we will send out a survey to the board to see where we can do that. For that training, we would really like as many board members to be in person as possible for that training. So keep that in mind as you're looking at what your schedule is and when you complete that survey. So we will get that out to you as soon as we can. We are in communication with the trainer right now. We would like to have it within those first 2 weeks of January, like we've done for our previous trainings and January meetings. That is all that we have, and it is 10:30.
Wow.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.